Pastor Maldonado Williams, Lotus. Pastor Maldonado is less of a Formula One driver and more of a walking yellow flag. A man so infamous for crashing that the internet birthed the nickname Crash Tour before memes became a currency. Driving for Williams and later Lotus between 2011 and 2015, Maldonado's sole F1 win at the 2012 Spanish Grand Prix is treated like Bigfoot footage. Real but somehow unbelievable. While undeniably quick on his day, Maldonado's career was defined by wild inconsistency and an almost magnetic pull toward contact. His clashes, whether with rivals or track limits, became weekly features. Penalties racked up, radios exploded, fans groaned. He was also backed by PDVSA, Venezuela's state oil company, leading many to brand him a pay driver with more political weight than pace. In the court of public opinion, Pastor was less controversial and more chaotic, and chaos in F1 rarely gets forgiven. Today, his legacy lives on as a meme-tiered legend, an icon of disaster, and a cautionary tale every time a rookie shows up with deep-pocketed sponsors and a suspiciously crashy resume. Nelson Piquet Brabham, Williams, Benetton. Three-time world champion. Nelson Piquet was undeniably talented and spectacularly hated. This wasn't just a matter of style. Piquet weaponized words like some drivers use DRS. He called Ayrton Senna gay and accused Nigel Mansell's wife of being unattractive on live television. And this wasn't in a trash talk era, this was just him. He had the skill to back it up. Brilliant setups, technical feedback, and victories over F1 legends. But Piquet's off-track behavior permanently stained his legacy. His unapologetic use of racial and homophobic slurs resurfaced decades later, leading to a formal ban from the paddock in 2022. Even in the 80s, a grid full of alpha egos, Piquet stood out as uniquely unfiltered. He didn't care if fans booed or teammates hated him, and fans didn't forgive him for that either. Despite a resume that should place him among the greats, Nelson Piquet remains an F1 villain in the public eye, not for what he did in the car, but for everything he said outside of it. Romain Grosjean, Lotus, Haas. Romain Grosjean was either brilliant or terrifying. There was no middle gear. The Frenchman's 2012 season, in particular, was so crash-prone that the FIA handed him a one-race suspension after Spa, making him the first driver in 18 years to receive such a penalty. His nickname? The first-lap nutcase. Grosjean could be fast, even poetic on his best days. But he became a fan punchline due to high-profile collisions, spin-outs under pressure, and hot-headed radio rants. Driving for Lotus and later Haas, Grosjean's tenure felt like an opera of almosts and oopses. His Bahrain crash in 2020, a horrific fireball accident, nearly killed him, but also reshaped his image. Fans who once mocked him now admired his survival. Yet for many, the scars of constant chaos kept him in the love-to-hate category. In IndyCar, he's found more consistent form, but in F1 lore, Grosjean will forever be remembered as the driver who could have been, if only he kept it pointing straight. Lance Stroll, Williams, Racing Point, Aston Martin. If wealth bought speed, Lance Stroll would have lapped the grid. The son of billionaire Lawrence Stroll, Lance's entire F1 career has been haunted by the term pay driver. Despite multiple podiums and a pole position, he's struggled to convince fans he earned his seat purely on merit. Stroll's style is clinical but rarely inspired. He lacks the killer instinct fans expect from top drivers and often finds himself out-qualified and outshined by teammates. Whether paired with veterans like Sergio Perez or future stars like Fernando Alonso, Lance rarely sets the benchmark. His worst offenses? Indifference. Press interviews that sound like hostage statements. Racecraft that swings between cautious and careless. A radio demeanor that screams board meeting, not battle. Even with flashes of brilliance like his wet weather performance in Turkey 2020, Stroll remains widely disliked for what he represents. Nepotism in a sport built on meritocratic mythology. And in F1, that's a sin fans rarely forgive. Max Verstappen, Red Bull. Max Verstappen didn't just arrive in Formula One. He detonated into it. At 17, he was the sport's youngest debutant. By 18, he was a race winner. And by 24, he had triggered one of the most controversial championship showdowns in history. Fans didn't just watch Max, they either worshipped or booed him at full volume. Verstappen's aggressive driving style, defensive blocks, late dives, and no-surrender wheel-to-wheel scraps split the fandom. His 2021 title win, decided under absurdly chaotic race direction in Abu Dhabi, became the defining moment of tribal warfare in modern F1. Some called it karma, others called it robbery. Off-track, Max isn't a diplomat. His radio calls border on volcanic rage. He doesn't play PR games or filter his frustration, and that honesty, it either earns respect or fuels resentment. In 2025, with 3 world titles and Red Bull still dominant, the boos have grown louder, but so has his performance. Max Verstappen isn't just hated, he's feared, which in F1 is the most dangerous form of popularity. Esteban Ocon, Force India, Renault, Alpine. Esteban Ocon has mastered the art of teammate tension. Whether it's forceful collisions with Perez at Force India, high-stakes clashes with Fernando Alonso at Alpine, or simply refusing to yield on track when every strategy says move over, Ocon has developed a reputation as the paddock's ultimate lone wolf. Fans don't just dislike him for incidents, they question his judgment. His collision with Max Verstappen in Brazil 2018, while unlapping himself, cost Max a win and triggered a literal shove in Parc Ferme. The message was clear. Ocon's decision-making isn't just bold, it's baffling. His driving is quick but often erratic. He's praised for resilience and work ethic, but criticized for burning bridges everywhere he races. Even his 2021 Hungarian GP win, arguably the result of wild luck and Alonso's defensive wizardry, did little to shift his public image. Ocon's talent is undeniable, but so is the trail of annoyed teammates, frustrated strategists, and skeptical fans left in his slipstream. Michael Schumacher, Benetton, Ferrari, Mercedes. Michael Schumacher is a legend, but legends aren't always loved. Yes, he's a 7-time world champion. Yes, he rewrote the definition of dominance. But he also rewrote the rulebook on win-at-all-costs racing. From his infamous crash with Damon Hill in 1994 to his deliberate attempt to block Jacques Villeneuve in 1997, Schumacher's ethics were flexible. Fans admired the relentless perfection, but many despised the arrogance, the cold calculation, and the team orders that turned Ferrari into a dictatorship with one driver. Then came the 2006 Monaco qualifying scandal where he parked his car accidentally to block the track. F1's version of theater, and Schumacher was the villain with the best script. Even his 2010-2012 comeback with Mercedes didn't melt hearts. His aggressive defense against rookies like Hülkenberg and Barrichello seemed out of place. He was still the general, even if the army had moved on. Loved, respected, hated. Schumacher's legacy is a paradox wrapped in carbon fiber. Lewis Hamilton, McLaren, Mercedes, Ferrari. Lewis Hamilton is a 7-time champion, fashion icon, social activist, and statistical god of F1. But none of that insulated him from becoming one of the sport's most polarizing figures. For every fan who adores his story, style, and stardom, another sees arrogance, hypocrisy, or just plain boredom with the dominance. In the turbo hybrid era, Hamilton's Mercedes was so far ahead that fans tuned out before Q3. His dominance made it look easy. Too easy. And easy breeds resentment. Even when he raced cleanly, critics called him overrated. When he spoke on social issues, detractors called him preachy. When he wore purple velvet suits to the paddock, the memes followed. His battle with Verstappen in 2021 ignited civil war in the fandom. His silence after Abu Dhabi was haunting. His return in 2022 felt biblical. But for many, the damage was done. Hamilton was no longer just a driver, but a symbol. Now at Ferrari in 2025, Lewis is chasing a fairy tale ending. But love him or hate him, there's no middle ground. Only noise. And a lot of it. Sebastian Vettel, Toro Rosso, Red Bull, Ferrari, Aston Martin. Sebastian Vettel was once the baby-faced assassin of Formula One, and for a time, fans despised him for it. His reign at Red Bull from 2010 to 2013 was methodical, unrelenting, and deeply boring for anyone not named Dietrich Mateschitz. Pole, win, fastest lap, finger point to the sky. Repeat. His dominance had a smug aftertaste. He wasn't charismatic like Hamilton, nor edgy like Alonso, just ruthlessly efficient. And when he ignored team orders in Malaysia 2013, multi-21 Seb. He wasn't just hated by fans, he was hated by his own teammate Mark Webber. Trust died that day. At Ferrari, his image softened, but the pressure turned him erratic. Spin after spin. Radio meltdowns. A screaming no in Canada 2019. By the time he reached Aston Martin, Vettel had reinvented himself as the sport's moral compass, green flagged by climate activism and compassion. But for a generation of fans, his Red Bull years remain a trigger. Too perfect, too dominant, and too unapologetic for it. 4 titles didn't bring universal love, just a long, slow campaign of forgiveness. Fernando Alonso, Minardi, Renault, McLaren, Ferrari, Alpine, Aston Martin. Fernando Alonso is a 2-time world champion, political mastermind, and possibly the most divisive figure in modern F1 history. His raw talent is undisputed. His ability to detonate every team from the inside? Also undisputed. He broke Renault's monopoly, beat Schumacher in his prime, and then promptly burned every bridge within a 30-mile radius. His first McLaren stint in 2007 ended with spy scandals and civil war. Ferrari called him a savior until he called them incompetent. Alpine loved him until they didn't. Aston Martin, for now, tolerates him. Alonso's driving is fierce, cerebral, and somehow always 5/10 better than the car deserves. But fans resent the arrogance, the subtle jabs, the relentless blame games. He's equal parts samurai and saboteur. To some, he's a misunderstood genius. To others, a walking HR complaint. Either way, Fernando Alonso is a driver you feel something about, and that something often sounds like booing. Juan Pablo Montoya Williams? McLaren. Juan Pablo Montoya didn't care about your legacy, your decorum, or your steering wheel. He came to F1 in 2001 with IndyCar swagger, and promptly started dive-bombing Schumacher like a Grand Prix was a bar fight. Fast, fearless, and emotionally allergic to authority, Montoya was a fan magnet and a steward's nightmare. His driving was all-out aggression. His radio messages were pure venom. His career highlight reel? Overtakes, insults, and penalties stacked like Jenga. He feuded with everyone, took out rivals like they owed him money, called Michael Schumacher arrogant, called the FIA clueless, and after a series of DNFs and blow-ups with McLaren, he just vanished into NASCAR. To this day, Montoya is remembered less for his wins and more for the energy he brought. Chaotic, visceral, and often self-destructive. You didn't just watch JPM race, you braced for impact, which made him unforgettable and totally gloriously polarizing. Kevin Magnussen, McLaren, Renault, Haas. Kevin Magnussen made a podium on debut. It was all downhill from there, sometimes literally. Known for his aggressive defense, elbows-out overtakes, and a deeply sarcastic attitude, K-Mag has spent a decade annoying just about everyone. He told Nico Hülkenberg to suck my balls. He dive-bombed like Maldonado with better PR. He made the Haas garage a rotating door of broken suspension arms and bruised egos. And yet, every time you thought he was done, he came back. Magnussen is the guy who drives like he's got nothing to lose. And that's exactly what makes him so polarizing. To fans who love chaos, he's a cult hero. To others, he's a hazard with team radio privileges. He's carved out a weird legacy. A guy with just enough talent to stay, but just enough baggage to never thrive. In the F1 ecosystem, Kevin Magnussen is the perpetual wild card. Respected by some, resented by many, ignored by none. Helmut Marko, Red Bull, advisor. Okay, technically not a driver, but Helmut Marko's influence on F1 has been so controversial, it's earned him a permanent villain arc. As Red Bull's senior advisor and head of their junior program, Marko is the man behind the curtain, and often the one pulling the rug out from under young drivers. He's known for ruthless mid-season sackings, hi Daniil Kvyat, high-pressure expectations, and a complete lack of filter. When he's not pressuring Yuki Tsunoda to calm down, he's accusing Sergio Perez of being less focused because he's South American, geographically incorrect, and deeply offensive. His unapologetic old-school views regularly spark backlash. Critics say he's built a toxic environment at Red Bull. Supporters say he's just brutally honest. But even among the F1 elite, Helmut stands out for turning harshness into a brand and making half the grid fear his phone calls. He's not on track. But when it comes to fan fury, Marko might as well be starting on pole. Sergio Perez, Sauber, McLaren, Force India, Racing Point, Red Bull. Sergio Checo Perez is beloved in Mexico and significantly less so everywhere else. He's carved out a long, respectable F1 career, but ever since joining Red Bull in 2021, the pressure has turned admiration into aggravation. His qualifying pace wavers wildly. His race pace is sometimes magical, other times maddening. And when he's not defending like a lion, he's spinning like a Beyblade into turn 1. Verstappen fans call him a liability. His own team radios suggest doubt. The boo birds have grown louder. Off-track, Perez presents as humble and professional. But controversies like late-night partying rumors during race weekends have chipped at that image. Add in Red Bull's constant PR juggling act, and Perez often ends up looking like a scapegoat, even when he's underperforming. Checo isn't hated for who he is. He's hated for what he's not. A true match for Verstappen. And in the brutal theater of F1, second best is always just a few spins away from public enemy. Charles Leclerc Sauber, Ferrari. The golden boy turned heartbreak merchant. Charles Leclerc came into F1 with clean lines, Monaco charm, and a Ferrari contract. Fans adored him until the repeated errors, team radio meltdowns, and passive-aggressive interviews began piling up. In 2022 and 2023, he was the guy. By 2025, he's the guy who spins in qualifying, yells at his engineer, and blames the wind. A Ferrari driver with championship-level speed and karting-level luck. His low tolerance for team mistakes often manifests in tantrums over radio, exposing Maranello's dysfunction but also his own emotional volatility. And his crash-heavy weekends, Imola, France, Baku, take your pick, feed into a narrative of fragility under pressure. Leclerc is still immensely popular, but also quietly resented by fans who once believed he'd dethrone Hamilton or Verstappen. Now he's just trying to outqualify his own reputation. John Alesi Tyrrell, Ferrari, Benetton, others. John Alesi was passion incarnate, equal parts hero and headache. He drove every lap like it was his last, and every race like he was owed victory by the universe. Spoiler, the universe never delivered. One win, countless spins, a career powered by chaos and cursed luck. At Ferrari in the 90s, Alesi had a cult following, but for many fans, the love wore thin. He was too emotional, too erratic, too allergic to finishing clean races. He clashed with strategy, collided with rivals, and crashed out of podiums like it was a hobby. He was almost brilliant, almost elite, almost everything Ferrari needed. And in F1, almost turns into, are you kidding me, real fast. Fans grew frustrated. Pundits called him wasteful. Teammates braced for contact. Today, Alesi is remembered with affection and eye rolls in equal measure. His name is legend, but often spoken with a sigh. Niki Lauda, March, BRM, Ferrari, McLaren. Niki Lauda is a legend, an icon, a walking comeback story. But he also wasn't exactly cuddly. Lauda's no-nonsense personality, obsession with precision, and ruthless candor made him revered and feared. He called out Ferrari politics to their faces, clashed with Enzo Ferrari himself, and famously withdrew from the 1976 Japanese Grand Prix due to safety concerns, while in a title fight with James Hunt. Fans booed, sponsors panicked. Lauda didn't flinch. His driving was surgical. His press interviews were tactical strikes. If he thought something was stupid, he said it, with no sugarcoating, no PR polish. And in a sport that thrives on flair, Lauda's cold pragmatism made him an outsider in his own legend. Even post-retirement, as a Mercedes advisor, Lauda stirred controversy, speaking bluntly about drivers, rules, and anyone not operating at German efficiency. Loved for his courage, yes, but never universally liked. That wasn't his goal anyway. Rubens Barrichello, Jordan, Stewart, Ferrari, Honda, others. Rubens. Barrichello is one of the nicest guys to ever turn a wheel in Formula One. And somehow, that made him polarizing. As Michael Schumacher's longtime number 2 at Ferrari, Barrichello played the loyal soldier a little too well. Austria 2002? Yeah, fans never forgot. He moved over, he obeyed, he bit his tongue. And for many, that was unforgivable. Not because he wasn't talented. Rubens had wins, poles, and raw pace, but because he seemed content to not fight back. When he finally did push back, it was too late. His image was cemented as F1's eternal bridesmaid. Even stints at Honda and Williams couldn't shake the vibe. Fans respected him, but they also groaned when he played the victim again. Barrichello's reputation is one of missed moments and quiet regret. Hated? Maybe not fully, but among F1 fans who prize fire over fairness, he's the guy they never wanted to see on the top step. Vitantonio Liuzzi, Red Bull, Toro Rosso, Force India, HRT. Remember him? Barely? That's the point. Vitantonio Liuzzi entered F1 with hype. Italian flair, Formula 3000 champion, Red Bull-funded rocket ship. But what followed was a long, bewildering stint of May performances and forgettable races. Liuzzi became a running joke among fans not for what he did, but what he didn't. No wins, no podiums. Just a lot of mid-grid mediocrity punctuated by occasional brain fade incidents, and a helmet design cooler than his resume. At Force India, he was consistently outpaced. At HRT, he was a glorified test dummy. He stayed in the sport longer than most fans expected, and longer than many thought he deserved. He wasn't loathed with passion, he was loathed with indifference, which in F1 might actually be worse. Daniil Kvyat, Toro Rosso, Red Bull, AlphaTauri. Daniil Kvyat was never bad, but his timing was tragic. Promoted too early, demoted too harshly, and forever branded as the guy who made way for Max Verstappen. That alone was enough to put him on the receiving end of relentless fan scrutiny. Nicknamed the Torpedo after dive-bombing Vettel in Sochi 2016, Kvyat's reputation for clumsy first laps became a meme. And while he improved, the stigma stuck. Every lockup, every lunge, every midfield incident, fans were already shaking their heads. Red Bull's brutal talent conveyor belt didn't help. Kvyat was dropped, revived, dropped again. His confidence evaporated, his pace fluctuated, and his radio always sounded like someone being slowly demoted in real time. Fans didn't hate Daniil personally. They hated what he represented. Red Bull's impatience, career whiplash, and squandered potential. He was a casualty of the system, but also an architect of his own demise.